All right, welcome back, Edwin and Ed, to our post-webinar Q&A session, where we'll now have a little bit more time to dive into those interesting questions during our live webinar that we just did not have just enough time to answer in that session. So we can sit back, relax, and dive into some of the intriguing questions asked during the session. Welcome back.
Good to be back.
So I would like to kick us off with Audrey's question. Do you have any advice on how to integrate this paradigm or system early on at recruitment stage, for example? What does role design mean for outreach, recruitment of new employees?
Yeah, I can jump on this one because this was an important thing that we felt the moral responsibility to do. It really wouldn't be fair to people to bring them into a self-managing company without explaining to them clearly what it is that they got into. So one of the kind of things that I've written a blog post about and noticed when it comes to self-management, there's kind of three stages that people go through, and I call it head, heart, habit. So head is you first need to understand mentally, this is a different paradigm. You use that paradigm word. This is a different paradigm where everyone is fully empowered to do their best work. So you need to understand that with your head, and you need to say, yeah, I'm willing to change myself and I'm willing to go through the bumps and the bruises in order to try out that new way of working. The second phase, I call the messy middle. It's the heart phase. So inevitably, you get some hard feedback, or there's some conflict, or there's some generative decision making proposal that didn't go your way, or whatever. There's at some point there's some fear triggered, and you're actually quite afraid, and you feel like you need to point fingers and protect yourself, and that you've got to take care of yourself like we have to in a typical manager filled environment. And that's when really the team kind of gets around and emotionally says, hey, there's something valuable for you to learn here, but we love you, we care about you, you're safe here. And then the final stage, which you never get out of, is the habit stage, where you're really now changing some of those old habits, and you're kind of becoming a better version, a better working version of yourself by having different habits and behaviors. So anyway, the reason why I share this is I believe that you shouldn't be hiring anyone that hasn't progressed past the head phase. So however extreme you are in, for instance, separating roles from jobs, having radical responsibility where people can choose and propose their own work, whatever it is that you're doing that is different from what a traditional, environment would be like, you really have to explain that to people. They need to understand it, and they need to actively say yes to it. And then I would actually also suggest, depending on how extreme kind of your environment is around radical responsibility, you need to tell them that they're going to go through some emotionally difficult situation where you get feedback that doesn't, land right, where you are afraid and you're triggered. That is inevitable. Everyone goes through it. And I think that's also imperative that you share that in the recruitment process. And that in a way, like we used to have what we call the teal fit interview. So we would have a panel interview where we're asking very deep, tell me a time when questions to kind of let the person know this is a place, we like to say, where we get people done through work, not work done through people. This is not just a place where you can 9 to 5 clock in, clock out. There's going to be emotional labor here.
Wow, what a
So
great quote.
I
yeah,
love
well,
that.
I didn't make that up. I stole it from someone. But anyway, that being said, this can be the ultimate recruiting tool because
Right.
everyone's job ads look the same. But if you are clearly stating how it is that you're different, and then you have supporting materials that show that and prove that, you will find that you get exactly the kind of people that you want working in your organization through that process.
Fantastic. And Ed, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I love all that, Edwin. And I guess two things I'd add. One is that I think down deep, a lot of people do want that kind of shared decision making. They want to be treated as adults. We may be uh, habituated to places where we are not having a lot of power and we are kind of deferring to authorities. But I think a lot of people can get to that point of having the heart and the habit, along with the head agreement, that they ought to have more authority in their day-to-day jobs. And the second thing I'd add is that there are tools out there that can help you display this new paradigm and live it. And one that I'm thinking of is a company that I've done some work for. It's called Peerdom, where they allow you to identify all your roles, internally. And one company that I'm aware of called Loico, which is a Swiss-based HR services company, everyone puts their roles on their email signature. So it's not that they're putting their job title, they're saying, here's the range of things I do. And it's a way of demonstrating, and I think can be in a recruitment tool too. Like we're not your typical company. Like I may have three roles in HR, but also one over in marketing and maybe one in facilities, if that's where my passions and skills are. So it's both a messaging issue, but also potentially a technology tool approach if you want to get integrated, integrate this new paradigm at that recruitment stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to jump on that again. I'm just remembering one of the hires that we made. It was kind of a senior level position where the person had a role of performing coaching and assistance for various recruiters, right? And I was brought in to be on the hiring panel. And what we realized is like really the key thing is how valuable is this person's coaching and advice. So what we did was we actually organized as part of the interview process. Here is a bunch of information about a particular person, and now you got an
Mm.
hour coaching session with that person. We actually did it with two people. And what was interesting is the person who did the best in the panel interview wasn't didn't wasn't rated as the most valuable coach, and the person who actually did very quite poorly because she was nervous and just not as great of a kind of a one-to-many interviewer speaker, she was
Right.
magic in the coaching sessions. And so the two recruiters were like, hands down, we want this person to be our mentor, our coach. And
Wow.
so to actually do what we call in the recruiting world a realistic job preview plus an assessment of actually like what is it that they're going to be doing here and who are they going to be doing it with, and just have them do it with those people and let those people tell you how they did it, right? So I think you can reinvent your recruitment process to be more human and more like let's just actually just try to have people do an approximation of the work that's most important.
Wow. That's so outstanding because most recruitment processes are focusing on skills that are not required in the role or job later on. So the realistic job preview idea really resonates a lot. Yes to that. Awesome. Thank you both for your answers. The next question I would like to dive into is how do you deal with the very loud voices in certain teams? For example, radical responsibility might mean that those who are more confident end up progressing more or taking more space.
I could jump in there first, and Nora, because this is a topic near and dear to my heart, in part because I've worked with introversion and looking at introversion and gender in particular. And this is a huge issue, right? And the last answer kind of spoke to it, that Edwin mentioned the candidate who was smooth on their feet in a one-to-many operation wasn't necessarily a good coach. And introverts' skills can often be drowned out in the traditional business world, which is pretty much an extrovert friendly place in most places, where loudership runs the show, as my friend Jennifer Conweiler has noted. I think that one of the strategies that is important here is for an organization to recognize introversion as a form of diversity and inclusion. That you need to be mindful of how introverts thrive, and kind of acknowledge that just because you have a loud voice in a public room doesn't mean you should get more power. So there's kind of an education component. I also think that this is a place where managers can in these newer environments can step up, so that if you don't have the team members taking on their peer and saying, you know what, we've heard enough from you. I want to hear from other people and make sure everyone has an equal say. That might be the manager's role to say, I'm going to create a place where we have psychological safety. And one of the features of psychological safety work, places that have that, which we know advances performance, is that everyone roughly shares the mic. So this is, to me, it's both like kind of a systemic education issue, but also a leadership issue of saying, let's make sure everyone can be heard here and no one person dominates.
Yeah, Ed, you're 100% bang on. You use some of the buzzwords that we've been putting into practice. Psychological safety, the work of Amy Edmondson, is so critical. And basically, there was a huge Google study that was done where they said, let's figure out what makes the highest performing team. And they actually had a bunch of Stanford students, I think it was, PhDs or whatever, and they looked at all of the things that you would think make a high performance team: intelligence, experience, all this stuff, and they couldn't figure it out. And then they started asking some wackier questions, and what they found was that the biggest predictor of a high performing team was the degree to which it was psychologically safe. And one of the measures there is equal talking time, relatively equal talking time. Another marker is being able to ask dumb questions. I don't understand. Another thing is to be able to put out your craziest ideas and to not kind of be persecuted for that. So this is something that we took very seriously at Raise. We did equal talking time training for everyone. We had different rules in place, things like 3 before me. So managers or outspoken extroverts, people like me, were told like every time there's a question, it's 3 people need to speak before I'm able to speak. There's a really great video from Simon Sinek about why leaders should speak last. And I think that that's an ethos that's very important and valuable. The other thing that we've put into practice pretty consistently is a set of meeting structures called liberating structures. Ed, you're probably familiar. Nora, you're familiar. So go and check out liberatingstructures.com. There's like 33 or something different sort of meeting structures, which all build collective intelligence and psychological safety. So I happen to be one of those outspoken, loud people who talks way too much and way too. I've had colleagues say that I speak opinions as facts. So this is something that I've had to learn to shut up, learn to go to the back of the room, and also have gotten feedback that when I'm talking too much, that actually dissuades people from doing the same. So I've seen the impact. So I would say the role for the resource manager is, again, the blue hat. What are your meeting practices? What are the structures? What are the expectations, the organizational behaviors, the norms that we will all agree to? And so you are in this great position to suggest new organizational norms, point to
Yes.
data like psychological safety, Amy Edmondson, Prime to Perform, and say, this is how top companies behave. And when you have loudmouths like me, you can, bring those books and say, hey, you are dominating too much. And, like, you need to speak last, right? So I think this is a really important, and again, it's a valuable thing that will drive performance and increased innovation in your organization.
Fantastic. Wow. Some very concrete ideas. Thank you both very much for sharing. If you look around the world right now and also the past few years, there have been so many layoffs. Whenever an uncertain time hits, global pandemic being one of them, but also right now, we can sense that a lot of companies are laying people off to large numbers. And I would just like to get your perspective on layoffs and the current context we're in.
Go ahead, Edwin.
Oh no,
Go first.
I just said how I got to speak last. So
Are
you
you
go
doing me
first.
one before me? So I should go first. All right, I'll go first. I'll let you demonstrate your habit. I love this question, Nora, and I know Edwin has a lot to say on it too. I think resource managers ought to be very careful as they're advising their teams or their leaders or making decisions around layoffs, and really see layoffs as a last resort.
Mm.
There's I've studied this topic as a journalist and researcher, and there's a lot of evidence that companies cannot cut their way to growth, and that there's a great report by Wayne Cassio done for SHRM a couple of years ago, and it generally does not work to really think you're going to trim now and grow later, and in large part because I think organizations have ignored the human side of layoffs. They've looked at the numbers side. Yeah, we're our revenue's down 20%. We got to cut 20% of expenses. And that's usually people are our biggest expense, but we ignore the morale drops, the survivor guilt, the productivity loss as people take on more work and are not as effective as they used to be. So there's a lot of problems around that, and I've experienced this personally. I remember when I was in an organization that laid some folks off. The rest of us spent so much time talking about the layoffs. Like, are we next? How mad we are, or how sad we are for our colleagues who got dumped. It's a real thing, and I know of an example. One of my main clients has not done a layoff ever, or maybe a tiny one some years ago, but basically they've avoided layoffs. This is a company called Credit Acceptance, and they've been an incredibly successful company partly because of that. They bring everybody along, and in hard times they've done other kinds of belt tightening. And Edwin talked about it with Raise. So there are usually alternatives, usually creative alternatives, including even like furloughs or getting people together to talk about how we can take salary cuts and that sort of thing. Really think hard before for engaging in a layoff.
Yeah, and I would just love to add to that. The way that companies typically do it is the managers, executives behind closed doors are
Mm.
making the tough decisions, and then they're announcing it, and then mid-level managers have to go and execute that. And like Ed said, everyone's worried about it. Essentially, it sends shockwaves of fear and perpetual fear, and when we're in a fear constricted scarcity state, we cannot do our best work. We simply
Mm.
cannot.
Mhm.
And so, and even the threat of a layoff, or the imagining that these conversations are being had, you're going to send those shockwaves. So the alternative is to engage your employees like adults and ask for creative ideas, proposals. There's a beautiful story in that book I referenced, Reinventing Organizations. I think the company is called Favi, and they had something happen and they lost half their business. And the CEO went into the shop floor, the factory floor, and he got up on a soapbox and said, "We're in trouble. We've lost 50% of our business, and there's no way that we could possibly employ everyone and pay everyone what they gotten paid. So what ideas do you have?" And very quickly, there was a collective decision, I think, to take quite a large salary cut, each person. And so you'd be amazed at what people are capable of. We all manage mortgages and car payments and people losing jobs. We manage this kind of stuff all the time in our lives. And so simply to share, here's my problem, here's what I'm afraid of, what can we do? Is a constructive, more love-based way of engaging people, and then not having to carry that weight around like you're the executioner. And then I want to kind of put maybe a more of a realistic tinge on the Raise story. So Raise, yeah, raised its net income by 650%. And we did all this staffing around COVID-19, but when COVID-19 kind of went away, all of that revenue went away as well. The company, while it was growing the revenue, dramatically increased a bunch of innovative big bets that it would kind of use to continue to grow revenue coming out of that. And not all those big bets worked out. So in the last year, Raise has had to do some reduction in staff. But because we don't, there is no such thing as a layoff. The way it's
Mhm.
been done is through what we call contribution reviews. And so a contribution review can be initiated by any person in the company. And it's basically saying, I'm not sure that Ed is contributing relative to what the company is paying Ed. And then Ed gets the choice. I either take the package or I do a role advice process. And then I'm completely empowered. Here's what I'm going to do to raise my performance.
Mm.
And then people, can give their consent, right?
Mhm.
So it's a targeted performance kind of review process that still empowers the person to make the decision. Do I take the package, or do I change my role or my impact so that now I'm accretive, right, to the organization? Now, that being said, it's not all unicorns and rainbows. That sends shockwaves of fear, as well, right? It's a difficult thing to go through when you've got a number of people going through contribution reviews. But because every person is empowered to make the decision, it's much more humane, and it's actually a better way of getting through a tough
Mm.
period like that.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, interesting. Thank you very much for sharing. As we're coming to our end of the post-webinar Q&A session, I have a final summing up question for both of you. What is the main message you would like to leave people with in regards to how to humanize the way work is distributed and lean into the human side as a resource management professional?
Edwin, you and I are trying to be the most psychologically safe providers here. I'll jump in again. Let you keep practicing that, Edwin. I'm going to borrow what you just said, though, Edwin. My main message is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to lean into that human side, and to trust that the leading thinkers and the research that I did at Great Place to Work and others have done point to this being a human era that we're emerging into. And you may feel like a black sheep at your organization if you start pushing these ideas, but you're really where the future is if you're doing that. And again, I would point out that COVID made that clearer than ever, and that employees they're gonna expect to be treated more as human beings moving forward, especially, and the younger generation was heading in that direction anyways. So we really got to treat people as human beings, not as cogs in a machine that are going to be like plugged in different places. And so again, to come back to our title today, I think it's time to put the human in resource management.
Beautiful. Thank you,
Yeah,
Ed.
I agree, Ed. And I would just add to that. I've gone and done a pretty deep dive into AI in the last year, and there are people are saying, like, as far as a tool is concerned, this is kind of like humans discovering fire. um, People saying this is going to have a bigger impact on our lives than the internet has in terms of change. We're just, I believe, at the very beginning, tip of the iceberg for what this technology will do and can do. And there are obviously a lot of people that are afraid of, I'm going to lose my job. The AIs are going to take over. I think there will be a lot of job losses in certain sectors. At the same time, this technology can create jobs and wealth and opportunity and meaningful work like nothing else we've ever seen before. So to me, it's going to be a story between the half fulls and the half empties. The half empties trying to say, "Ah, no," and like, let's push it away and let's not, and the half fulls that say, "Oh my God, how can I now use this technology to only do the work that I love?"
Yes.
To only do the work that I'm really good at and better, the human to human work. I mean, that's something that the AI may never be better at, is the human to human work. And so I believe that the role of the resource manager has maybe arguably never been as important as it is today, because we have to navigate this incredibly powerful new technology and figure out how we can use it to put people into the best position they can possibly be. So if you imagine a future where basically the AIs are kind of doing everything for everyone, and robots, I was looking this morning at like a video of these new humanoid robots and what they're capable of doing. So then what are going to make what will make organizations different from each other? What will be the source of competitive advantage if we have technology doing all the work? Well, the source of differentiation and competitive advantage will be the humans that we have and the ideas that they're using or employing the AIs to do. So like this, I mean, people are saying that AIs will take over the CEO's job and middle managers' jobs quite quickly because the AI will know all of the organizational information and they'll know all of the market information. So why would you trust a person versus this AI that's a billion times smarter, right? So navigating into this world, this is about this is about human resource management, right? And so what can we do practically as a resource manager? Find the other people like me in your organization that are really excited about
Mm.
taking this to the next level. Start with small little experiments, working with people who believe what you believe, and you will build momentum and people will start to see what's possible, what's possible, what's possible. So just go and find the other glass half full people in your organization and get excited about it.
Wow, what an empowering last statement to all the resource managers out there. Your time has come more than
Yes.
ever. Your role is of utter importance for the transformation of organizations ahead. Beautiful. Again, both of you, a heartfelt thank you. You have been absolutely amazing. It's been my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar and to the post-webinar Q&A session. Thank you for everything you've shared with me and our audience, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Nora.
Two Eds
Take
are
good
better
care.
than one, right, Ed?
Always.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
Hi, everyone.